Hello all, welcome to the Virtual Agent Academy. My name is Nabil Asbi and I'm here with Marcel Gutzel and Erin Bailie. Today's topic is going to be how to use Microsoft to improve the virtual agent conversation. First, if you have any questions, please always feel free to leave them in the Q&A section. I'll try our best to answer them. Our goals for today is to learn how to configure Microsoft Teams, the messaging app framework with your ServiceNow instance. After that, we're gonna talk about and learn the best practices on how to design an optimal virtual agent experience with Teams. And the last part, we're going to experience the virtual agent with Microsoft Teams. As I mentioned, please leave us your questions in the Q&A section. Before we jump into the exercise, first let's talk about the integration that ServiceNow and Microsoft Teams have built together. So both companies teamed up here to deliver the customer with a great digital experience and supercharge the employee productivity by integrating the virtual agent and Microsoft Teams. As you know, Teams is fast-growing social collaboration platform. And with this AI-powered chatbot solution, bringing it into the employee workspace, the employee will benefit from having one-stop shop, for example, to get information very easily, resolve issues without having to look for the right portal or look for the help desk. Second, we can easily make requests by performing routine work tasks and seamlessly speaking and transferring to live agent. So in summary, what we're doing here, we're extending the reach of all of ServiceNow powerful workflows that are running on the Now platform by putting them into the flow of people day-to-day lives, which is Microsoft Teams. Now, part of this integration, what we also delivered is a virtual agent light ITSM plugin. So if you don't have the the ServiceNow ITSM professional product, you can still experience this by installing this via Virtual Agent Lite. And there you're gonna find out-of-the-box conversation, like to report an IT issue, check the status of an issue, and search the knowledge base. We're going now to, Marcel's gonna take us through the steps to how to configure this step by step. Marcel, can you please show us how do you configure that?
Yeah, thanks, Nabil, for that great intro. So as we kick off the session today, we thought it made a lot of sense to cover some of the administrative actions that you would need to do to first get situated on the Teams using adapter framework. And so what we're going to do is walk through what that looks like, make sure that you see some of the screens that you would need to visit in order to set those up. And then once from your ServiceNow instance, how you would initiate that integration with the adapter framework, how that works, some considerations that you might need to think about. And then finally, from the user perspective, how do we link your Microsoft Teams tenant for use with Virtual Agent? So as we move forward into more some of the housekeeping items of how do we even get started with setting this up, right? And Erin, did you want to talk a little bit more about the Microsoft 365 developer program and how somebody could get going?
Absolutely. So the Microsoft 365 Developer Program is a free program which gives you access to a developer or a testing tenant, and you can add up to 25 users, and it's free indefinitely. So it gives you a free staging environment that you can use to set up your ServiceNow and Teams integration and test it out without having to roll it out live to your entire organization. So first you would go to the link that's shown in this slide in stage 1 and click Join Now. You'll complete a little bit of information. And when you've set up an account, it'll take you to this admin portal where you can see your Teams tenant as well as your Office and other M365 products.
Great, thanks, Erin. And some considerations. So Erin, from your experience, I mean, which one would you say is probably the most important or some ones that users might need to be mindful of?
Yeah, so if you already use M365 that's been provisioned by your organization and you're also trying to use M365 in that developer tenant, you might hit some confusion of which tenant you are logged into at a particular time. So my recommendation is to either sign out of your organization's Microsoft accounts all across the board, or to use an incognito or private browser for all of the testing and staging that you're doing so that your authentication isn't carried over from your organization. Otherwise, you have two authentications or two identities that are trying to sign into the same thing, and it can get really confusing really quickly.
Awesome. That's super helpful. And toward the end, we'll cover some more in-depth troubleshooting tips. But for now, I would say these are probably the most important things to be aware of at this stage. So as we move forward with how do we actually install this adapter framework and how do we make sure that this process is working and users can connect? So before we go into the live demonstration, the steps I'm going to take you through first are how do we install the Teams integration from the ServiceNow instance? And then how do we go ahead and link those two accounts? So the tenant account, your ServiceNow account, and once you're in the Teams tenant, how do you then go ahead and make sure you have access to virtual agent to be able to use? And so once you have access, you've linked your accounts, you can begin using the virtual agent application, and it walks you through a series of steps of just starting, linking your account, and then you are good to go in terms of being able to use either keyword discovery for topics. You can use natural language to discover intents that are available at your organization. So you're free to go ahead and start using that. I will pause there. Nabil, it looks like there's some questions coming in. Did we want to take a few at this point?
Yeah, one of the questions are, what are the list of plugins that we need to configure the personal instance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you would want to make sure this is under the assumption that you have all of your virtual agent plugins installed. So I would make sure that you have your virtual agent plugins. If you're using natural language understanding, you have those plugins as well. And I would encourage you to visit Docs to see what specific plugins you need for the Teams adapter framework. But you want to make sure you have the trifecta of those three just for the virtual agent portion. Again, as Nabil mentioned earlier, there's other components to this integration. So if you want to deploy those as well, I would also encourage you to visit Docs to make sure you have the correct ones installed.
Thanks, Marcel. The other question is, if you have the HR professional, then the ITSM Pro plugin is not needed. So virtual agents part of the professional offering a service now. So if you have the HR professional, you can use virtual agent with HR. And the same thing goes for ITSM Pro. If you have virtual agent and ITSM Pro, then you can use it in context of ITSM. I hope that answered the question. Going through the other questions, can you connect your Microsoft development tenant to a ServiceNow developer instance? So yes, this is what actually Marcel is going to show us during this session.
Yep.
I think that's it, Marcel.
Okay, great. So let's switch over to the live demonstration portion. And just to cover some housekeeping items, right? So as Erin mentioned earlier, this is what the developer program looks like. I would click join now. It would take me through a series of steps where I can set up a new profile. And once I have all of this information set up, I can then go ahead and move to my admin center. So the area I want to focus on today is being able to add a user. So under user management, I can go ahead and edit. I can add a user here, and this is for test purposes. So I'm going to use somebody who's actually in my demo instance. So we're going to use Bess, and I'm just going to give her a quick email. So Bess M at this domain. So this is an important for login. You want to make sure you have the onmicrosoft.com domain, and we'll give her a password. So I'm going to go through the steps of adding a user. Yes, I want to use this as a test user, and I will finish adding Bess. So now we have our user added. I can go ahead and test something out using Bess. So going over to my ServiceNow instance, you can see I'm logged in as this exact user. And how I got here was I typed in messaging apps integration. And so this screen brings up some of the different adapter frameworks. We're going to focus on Teams today. And once I click install, it's going to go ahead and take me to a third-party site. And this is where one of the common areas people can get confused or experience issues because you may already be logged in. So what I'm going to do is add that new email to this account. So I'm going to say bessm at I'm going to give her new email we just created. and her password. Okay, so it offers you to use multi-factor authentication. I'm going to skip that for now. And I'm going to go ahead and accept. Now this is just adding the user. So now it says I've installed. So this is a great confirmation. I'm going to go to Teams at this point. And so here's where I need to go ahead and sign in as Bess. Right? So I'm going to skip and I'm going to stay signed in as Bess. So now I am actually in the Teams tenant, but there's one more step I need to do in order for virtual agent to work. So while that tenant's coming up, Nabil, were there any questions we wanted to take at this point?
Yeah, so one of the questions is, do we need Integration Hub for this integration? So Integration Hub is not really needed for this. There is another integration between ServiceNow and Microsoft Teams that touch the Integration Hub, but for this one, you don't need it.
Okay.
Another question is the integration just limited to 3 topics, or can we configure more topics? To be clear on that, the virtual agent is a framework and you can configure and create more topics. Only if you don't have the ITSM Pro or the HR Pro, you get access to the ITSM VA Lite. And there you have only 3 topics that you cannot customize.
Awesome. Thanks, Nabil. So we're going to move into our last step here to connect this. And I'm going to pull up the apps. And the easiest way to do this is to type in ServiceNow. And you'll see the virtual agent option comes up. I'm just going to simply click add because I want to make sure that this is available. And I'm now able to start a conversation. So I'm brought to a start menu. I can click start and I will be prompted to then link my account with the ServiceNow account. So it takes just a minute, but it's now giving me this option to either continue as guest, link to ServiceNow. So that's what I'm going to do. And I want to confirm that these accounts are both linked. So I'm going to confirm that message. And at this point, it should open up a new tab and just say, this is confirmed. My account has been successfully linked for testing purposes. So navigating back over to Virtual Agent, I'm now live in Teams, and I can select from a variety of issues that are currently deployed with Virtual Agent. So this is one of my options I can pick from this list. But Nabil, you mentioned there's a really important point here, right? With using Teams and one of the productivity enhancements that users and organizations see.
Exactly. So one of the common things we hear from customers who are using virtual agent with Teams is how much they get more engagement, because the employee spend his day-to-day task in Teams chatting with other colleagues. So it makes it so easy to update a task or improve the data quality, because it's much easier to access any case, any information that you have inside of the ServiceNow instance while he's still in the tool that he used day-to-day. So can you show us an example here where we can update a task?
Yeah, so updating a task is probably one of the more common things somebody might do. And again, let's keep in mind, Bess is probably a user that sits on the fulfiller side. So Bess wants to update a task. She's received some information about someone's order for a new desktop monitor. And as she's going through this process, she can find more information on this particular incident. But notice the font changed here, right? So from an aesthetics perspective and from a brand compliance standpoint, maybe this is something that is part of the authoring experience I want to explore a little bit more. I want to make sure Bess has a very streamlined way of being able to use the virtual agent to go ahead and add a comment or a work note. So let's come back to this, but this is really gets into what I wanted to cover next with the authoring experience. And so as part of the authoring experience, right, one of the biggest questions we get is, we've deployed virtual agents, we use it on the portal, how do we go ahead and extend that experience so that we get seamless authoring into Teams? So what we're going to do is take an example of that task topic and go ahead and make a small change to that as part of the authoring experience. So Nabil, did we want to pause for questions at this point? I know I see some coming in.
Yes, we have a lot of questions, and this is great. So can we customize the VA brand in Microsoft Teams instead of using the Now Virtual Agent? I don't think currently it is available that you can do the branding within Microsoft Teams. I think it is on the short-term roadmap for the virtual agent. Other questions? Do you need integration hub for this integration? Not for this specific use case. Integration hub is not needed when you connect Teams with virtual agent. Marcel, would you like to speak a little bit more on the licensing when it comes to HR professional, if virtual agent is available there?
Sure. Yeah. So virtual agent is really available with HR professional or HR enterprise. So anything that really includes the portal as part of your SKU, you will have entitlements to virtual agent. So you can use the out-of-box conversations, build new conversations, but you're kind of free to use it if you have entitlements to those SKUs.
I have one more question for you. Is there a limitation on sending attachment for incident from Teams?
Well, so, and that's one of the things we wanted to talk about, right, as we get into the authoring experience. So one of the limitations today, and this is something on our roadmap, is if you're familiar with the file picker, right? So this allows you to upload an attachment or copy an image or a file type over. Currently, it's supported with copy paste only. So we expect to have the ability to actually upload that file from your desktop or laptop or other device in the short-term roadmap. But today it's more of a copy paste exercise, but it is supported. So that's definitely something where we want to talk about as part of the authoring experience. Okay, great. So we're in as this update task here, right? And what I want to do is, so we want to pinpoint where we saw that experience, right, with this notification. And as we come in here, we can see that there's actually, as part of this topic, a scripted task card. So I'm in the update task out-of-box topic. And what I want to do is make a change here. So I'm going to deactivate this topic and I'm going to duplicate it so I can make that change. And we're going to call it new update IT task.
So Marcel, this is part of the best practices. Always when you want to do customization to one of those out-of-the-box topics is to duplicate it before. That's just so you can get the latest and greatest in the next release.
Yep, absolutely. And it may take a minute or two for that topic to copy over. So just be patient. But in the meantime, while that's copying over, you can kind of see what intent it's linked to if you're using natural language understanding. And go ahead and make any additional changes. So we're going to refresh the screen and make sure we get our new update IT task topic so we can edit that. And one thing to note too, this will only show up at the bottom if you're using natural language understanding. So you want to make sure that if you have keyword turned on, you probably won't see this, but when you copy that topic, you want to make sure that this is showing up if you actually have an NLU intent associated with it. All right, so let's try it again over here. So we're going to go into our designer view. Oh, maybe that.
So while you do that, we have a question that keeps coming is there a way to do mass linking, auto linking? So the good news, yes, you can do it in the upcoming release, in Q release. You'll be able, as an admin, to mark auto linking, and that means that all users won't need to do the step that Marcel just showed us.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Nabil. So once we're in here, right, I'm in a duplicated topic, so I can go ahead and make some changes. So what we want to do is produce an experience that has one of the out-of-box cards, because that's going to render better in Teams. And what I can call it is new card display. And I'm just going to make some edits here. So I want to reference a script and I want to call the incident table from here. And the reason I'm referencing a script is because a lot of these actions, these pre-actions before you get to this point are script actions. So we want to go ahead and reference that. And we want to add a condition here. And what we're going to do is build this on sysid, because again, that's best practice. It's part of the script. And we're going to pull in a script variable that's already been set in our virtual agent topic design. So all I'm doing is I'm saying, new card display, we're going to create a condition, and we're going to tell it what table to look at. And what fields I want to display is really up to me. So short description, priority, and let's go with updated. And I want to see the caller field also, because I want some more information there. And so I want to save my work here, but I also want to do one more thing. So instead of dragging and dropping these and removing this card, it's actually easier to come in here and set the condition to false so that this doesn't show. So this is a little hack you can do to invalidate one of the nodes. So I've set this to false. And so I'm expecting my new card display to show instead of that scripted output. So from this point, I'm going to publish this task. So as that publishes, I just want to double check the properties that my intent comes up. So that is looking good. And let's switch back over here. So I'm going to now initiate this conversation again, but with that different authoring experience. So, yep, Nabil, was there a question?
No.
Okay, so let's try it again with the new update task. And so once that initiates, my new IT topic should show up with a better card display in the Microsoft Teams tenant. So while that's thinking, right, we want to go ahead and select one of these. So I'm going to select the desktop monitor that I want to make an update to. And notice, voila, we have a much better output on that card. So you can breathe a sigh of relief. This is one of the the recommended practices we advise to kind of optimizing your existing tasks for Teams. And I can go ahead and add maybe a comment to this. So I want to make an update. I want to just say, I received an ETA from procurement. And so we can just add a quick note to that. And I'm asked if there's anything else that can be of assistance. So switching back over quickly to our authoring experience. So we want to really talk about best practices. So there's a couple gotchas with Teams. Obviously, we just covered the difference between using a script output versus a card output. So, that's one of the ways where you can get the display to look a little bit more seamless. As we go through some of the builders, right, the user inputs, we talked about the file picker. So if you use a file picker, you probably want to specify, simply copy paste into the Teams tenant. And the carousel. So anything really with images, you may want to look at rescaling those images. Sometimes they can display much bigger than on the portal. So that's just something to be mindful of, as well as HTML. So if you're using an HTML node in your virtual agent design, you may want to look at using a different utility or a different bot output as opposed to the HTML, right? Because the font can be a bit larger than the standard font. And again, custom controls, we haven't tested this, but that may be something to be mindful as well. So Nabil, were there any other questions on the authoring experience before we go ahead to the employee experience?
So we had a question, if there's a way to have version control. I think the current way is to use duplicate, right? To give the topic different names to make sure that you have the latest version in that. So I'm trying to go through the questions. I see, can we leverage the same topic we use in web client VA, or do we have to create a new topic specific for Microsoft Teams? Marcel, I think this is one of the advantages of using virtual agent is you build a conversation in the designer, build once, deploy everywhere. So you don't have to deploy a conversation for each channel. You just have to maintain it in one place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a way to look at, I mean, obviously everything's going to render fine on the portal. I think when you look at expanding into teams, you want to just make sure and test that all of the different nodes that are part of your design are working and looking pretty seamless from the end user perspective. So that's just one thing to be aware of. But as Nabil mentioned, we have tons of builders and that can easily be accomplished. Okay, so I'm going to move forward with the user experience. So there's a couple really neat ways that users can interact with teams that you can't do on Portal. And we want to showcase what that looks like and just show a user kind of navigating from an employee perspective what that user experience is. And so as we start to head through the user experience, there's a couple what we call key commands. I don't want to call it keywords because that gets confusing with how we discover the topic. So the key commands are really there to help guide and navigate the user through the virtual agent experience. You can configure these, modify these, but these are the ones that come out of the box. And you can see if you have Live Agent configured, there's one for Live Agent Connect. So as the user goes through the experience, they can start to interact with these. So if I type help as my end user Bess, I can get some great tips here. And I can see, oh yeah, if I type hi, it starts the bot conversation, restarts, restart is begin a new conversation, log out. So these are really helpful for me to know. But I want to continue the conversation and go through the user experience. And so I'm just going to use natural language understanding. And I'm going to initiate a custom topic that we've built that kind of showcases the power of virtual agent. And so when Bess goes to request some paid time off and wants to initiate that process right from Teams after she's made her update to the IT ticket, she can go ahead and initiate that request right from here, as opposed to navigating across different systems to do that or phoning a friend in HR. So she's requested her PTO and that topic should come up. Submit it the keyword way. All right. So no, you don't want this information. All right. Nope, we're not going to speak with a live agent. So let's try it from here. So we're going to view and request PTO. And she's prompted with, so this is actually a static choice output. So you could see some of the different types of builders in action. And so we're going to have Bess request a simple leave. And once she requests that, it says, what type of leave are you requesting? Simple. Okay, so let's initiate a new one here. Yes. So we're going to say Bess has a question about a paycheck. Looks like I was testing that. I didn't complete that one. So we're going to go through the payroll discrepancy. And this is an out-of-box topic for HR, so you can see what that experience is. I can say no, I can peruse different knowledge articles, but if I actually want a result here, I can say, okay, I can either copy paste my pay stub or select the date that that pay stub was in question. So I can say January 15th, maybe I didn't receive enough overtime. So I can say my pay looks wrong. And so we're going to assume she was underpaid. Usually people don't contact or make a request if they're overpaid. So you can see Bess has a payroll case. We can see that nice card output here. And I'm just going to say no, there's nothing else that we can assist with. And see, we can get a survey here. So notice the images is a bit larger than on Portal. So you just want to make sure if you have a large image pop up, if you want to scale that back, that's fine. And we're going to end that conversation here. So she could type hi. But one thing to note on how to configure that, if you go back to messaging apps integration and we look at this Teams tenant installation, you can configure these different commands over here. So this is where I could say, instead of restart, I could use something different, like new topic. Instead of bye, I could say end. So these are just some different ways as an administrator, you could go ahead and make that experience a bit more personal for your organization. So switching hats quickly, right? Troubleshooting tips. Again, this is of paramount importance when you're going through this exercise. So some things to be careful of if virtual agent is not responding, if you're experiencing any authentication issues or any async issues. So we will leave this slide with you, but here's some just best practices from our side on how to resolve any troubleshooting issues.
So Marcel, we have a few questions that we can run over them really fast to make sure actually really good questions. Can Teams be used to send proactive questions to employees to prevent calls? I think this can be achieved using notification. Is that right, Marcel?
Yeah, absolutely. So notifications can be sent, as well as you could use virtual agent for a variety of different communication vehicles, right? So build topics or use notifications.
The other question is about virtual agent integrated with live agent. Can we say transfer to live agent? So I think Marcel, you came across this during the exercise. Yes, it is possible to interact with a live agent from Microsoft Teams. You have a topic called live agent. By one click, you will be chatting with a live agent.
Yeah, and I would say to add to what Nabil said, most organizations at first, when they deploy virtual agent, especially if they're coming from a chat strategy already, they want to make sure that a user can connect with a live agent in multiple places in that conversation. So you may at first find yourself building ways to connect with a live agent as one of the options in a topic, and eventually kind of moving toward that being more in the fallback topic as opposed to something that's kind of an option within each and every topic. So that's definitely something organizations kind of do in a phased approach, especially if you have a chat strategy today.
Yeah. So another question is, can virtual agent from different departments, for example, IT, supply chain, HR, integrate with a single team integration? The answer is yes. And this is really powerful to do because you save the employee all that headaches from looking for the right portal, the right page for submitting something. By interacting via text or just asking a question through the virtual agent app in Teams, you will be able to achieve that seamlessly. The other question is, there is a delay from virtual agent app to display the answers based on the keyword in Teams and default response time. So there is a property that you can configure in the instance to mimic a thinking time. Using that, you're gonna see that it reflects in the answers delay time. Is the Now VA true AI, or do we have to teach every utterance? So with Now Virtual Agent, you have natural language understanding also in the background. You don't have to teach every utterance, but using set few utterance, we can teach it to recognize the other use cases or the other way of people can ask for that. Marcel, do you have more to add on that?
Yeah, the best way is to look at your current records today. So your chat records, your phone records, your case records, and look at what are people asking and start using those as collecting different utterances. So let's say you decide to build an update task, printer issues, and a reset password, right? So you would want to use a broad collection from several different types of employees to make sure there's diversity in your utterances so that all users, when they type it in, they have a better chance of that intent being recognized just because the model's been trained on a bigger variety of utterances from your data.
Yeah. We'll take last two questions. How is multi-language handled? So with virtual agent, we also have natural language understanding that is enabled and powered by Paris release. I think we have French and German, and the upcoming release we're extending to more languages. I'm scrolling through the questions. There's a lot of great questions here. It's really hard to find the only one. Marcel, would you like to kind of confirm again and talk about the licensing? Because I see a few questions asking who's...
Yeah, and I would say if there's licensing questions, the best person is your account representative or customer success manager to handle that. Because again, everybody is on a unique licensing structure. So that's really the best place to make sure you have entitlements to virtual agent.
Another question, what analytics available after the virtual agent have been used for a while? So we have an out-of-the-box dashboard that provide out-of-the-box KPIs for the adoption of virtual agent, also over channels, or to find the most common news topics that your users used or they did not. That dashboard is available out of the box. All you need to do is just installing the plugin for that. Okay, I think that's it. We have a lot of questions, but please feel free to visit the virtual agent community. We look to see your questions there. We try our best to answer them as soon as possible. Thanks for attending today, and thanks Marcel, thanks Erin. I'll see you soon.